Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Bouncing Back with Brighton. In today's episode, there's not actually going to be any live commentary of any games because we've just won the Premier League. We beat Everton away from home 1-0, which confirmed that the title was coming to us. There's still 3 games I think to go. We'll quickly review the fixtures that you've missed. Defeats breed defeats. We ended up going being at home against Spurs and getting beat 2-0 in the game following the Manchester United defeat. They scored early on, 12 minutes in, then Dele Alli doubled it in the 86th minute. Poor performance from the boys in this one. We then had a home tie against Crystal Palace, which we won 3-0. Jeremy Doku with 1 and David Abraham with a double. Callum Chambers got sent off later on for them. And then finally the game that confirmed it all. David Abraham in the 32nd minute gave us the lead, and that was enough to see us crowned Premier League champions. Now, I'm not sure what's happened to Manchester City, whether they have dropped some points, because I thought it would have been a bit closer than this, but they are 16 points away from us with only one game in hand. Exact same as Liverpool. They've come back into contention in the top 4. Manchester United sitting in second, 12 points behind us with only 3 games to go. So that's going to be it for this season. I'm going to play the rest of the games. Stoke, Arsenal, Manchester City. We'll review them and then we'll do our end of season stuff. So we've concluded our Premier League season and we'll quickly run through the 3 fixtures that you've missed. Stoke City was the first of which, away from home, which we won 3-1. David Abraham, Sebastian Jaros and Rodrigo Marquez with the goals. They got a late goal in the 93rd minute. Next up was a ball draw against Arsenal away from home and 0-0. We did dominate the match in large spells but didn't really create anything going forward, so a draw was probably a fair result. And finally, in the final game of the season was Manchester City at home, which we won 2-1. David Abraham and Jordan Henderson with the goals. Diogo Jota got them a goal in the 77th minute. But to be honest with you, it was quite a comfortable game. And that sees the Premier League table finish looking like this. There is still a couple of games to be played, but nothing affecting too much. We finished champions, 94 points, 29 wins, 7 draws and 2 defeats. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm really glad we managed to knock the draws out after the first half of the season. I think we had 5 or 6 already coming towards the January-February period. So to turn them draws into wins is absolutely wonderful. The defeats are a little bit annoying. I thought we could maybe go for an undefeated season, but Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur put an end to that notion. David Abraham came close to winning the top goal scorer award. He got 20 goals for the season in the league. Aquino will get the highest average rating for us alongside Gonçalves finishing 3rd in the league. Assists-wise, we're nowhere to be seen. Clean sheets, Antonio Carlos got 19, which is fantastic for his debut season. So all around, a really, really good league campaign. In terms of the other competitions, of course, getting knocked out in the quarterfinal of the Champions League wasn't ideal, but that was the board expectation, which we met quite well. Disappointing to get beat by Manchester United, but the English clubs in European competitions just always seem to be my kryptonite. So even though Manchester United weren't a match for us in the league, you know, they've beat us handily in the Champions League. I think they beat us in the league as well, of course they did. So it's something to improve upon for next season. The FA Cup sort of got put by the wayside once we got to the latter stages of the campaign. Getting knocked out in the 6th round by Liverpool, I'm not really bothered. The League Cup, disappointing to lose in the final against Liverpool, getting knocked out by Liverpool in both domestic cup competitions. I would have liked to have won some domestic silverware to have the double on our hands, but it wasn't to be. The Premier League was the main focus for this season, and we've done it. Won the Premier League for the first time with Brighton. In terms of some of the end of season stuff, we're seeing the new Brighton overall best 11 who has been inducted in here. So Antonio Carlos has quickly replaced Jack Butland after only 1 season. Tavares, Suter, Badia Shields in there. Carlos Julio's there left back. Bentieb and Aquino, the 2 stalwarts of our centre midfield. Jaros Alex McAllister is still in the attack midfield role. You'll imagine Gravenberch will take that at some point. Jeremy Doku on the left and Rodrigo Marquez up top. You'll definitely see some more faces inducted into that over the coming seasons. Brighton best 11, I'm not bothered about that. End of season award. So fans player of the year was actually Luis Gonçalves, our centre back. He has had a fantastic year at centre back. Did he come in last season? He did for £3 million, and he's been sort of our second choice centre back alongside Mark Ulich being our first choice, but he's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm really glad to see him winning player of the season. I thought it would have been Aquino, who's came second, and Bentieb sits there in 3rd. Goal of the season, we'll have a look at that. Aquino versus Watford. Signing of the season actually went to David Abraham, who was signed for £12.5 million. He has had a fantastic season, but considering we signed Mark Ulich on a free transfer and he's like the best centre-back in the world, I don't understand that. But Well done, Ibrahim. And Young Player of the Season goes to Luis Gonçalves. Our season in review, few will have tipped Brighton to achieve more than continental qualifications, but we've confounded every expectation finishing top of the Premier League. It was a season to remember for the Seagulls, who surpassed expectations and enjoyed a strong spell of form around January that will ultimately carry them to the title. Match of the season was the 1-0 win against Everton, which it wasn't the match of the season. The match of the season was a 5-1 win against Liverpool early in the season, but that was the game that confirmed the Premier League title coming to us. Moment to forget was the 2-0 defeat against Spurs at home. I would tend to agree with that. Probably the Manchester United game was a little bit worse because that did end our undefeated streak. In terms of our stadium, you'll have seen if you follow me Twitter, we expanded it hugely last season by about 80 seats or something like that. We're 100% full again, so in the summer I will be requesting either an extension or a new stadium built for Brighton and Hove Albion. Total players used 26, who cares about that? So in terms of our confidence, absolutely fine in terms of the board. Major highlight was the Premier League win. Major lowlight was the quarter-final defeat against Manchester United in the Champions League. In terms of where they are sitting in club philosophies, we don't really have any, so we'll never really get highly rated on that. But dressing room atmosphere is top-notch. Club finances is top-notch. Club stature has grown. Transfers seems to be a bit, I thought that might have been a little bit higher. They were a little bit peeved that I sold Embalo in the January transfer window. I don't care about that. So confidence-wise, even with the new owners, we're doing absolutely fine. Our facilities have been downgraded, so club's facilities no longer rank where they did once in the footballing world. So we're going to quickly request improved youth facilities, which is, of course, it's going to be accepted. There's no reason for not to be. We're an incredibly rich club. They're going to absolutely accept anything like that. 2.7 million to upgrade our youth facilities is pretty much nothing. In terms of the summer transfer window, we currently sit on £141 million to spend and 400 grand available in the wages should we require it. And I think we will require it. So in terms of our squad and where I see it and how I think we can either modify it or improve it over the summer, goalkeeping area, I'm absolutely content with. We've got Jack Butland as a backup goalkeeper. He has been whinging a little bit over the course of the season, but so long as I can keep him happy, I'm more than happy for him to sit on my bench. At the very least, if he does end up wanting to leave during the transfer window, we'll probably have to sign an English backup. But Antonio Carlos has been a stalwart in the side. I think he's stayed free from injury throughout the whole season, so it might be a little bit of a risk if we ended up selling Jack Butland and signing someone who isn't quite as good. But for registration reasons, that's what would happen. But if I can keep both at the club for next season, I absolutely will. In terms of the right back, we still have Valentin and Thomas Tavares, which I am okay with going forward through with next season. Of course, some of our centre-backs can play there as well if we are really, really struggling in terms of injuries. Thomas Tavares has probably lost his place forever now as our first choice right back. He's still really quality and very well-rounded wing back, but with Valentin coming back after a decent loan spell with FC Porto, he's got bigger potential. I prefer his physicals, and he's just incredibly well-rounded as well, so I'm more than happy with him being my first choice right back for next season. Left back is pretty much the same as the right back. I think Carlos Julio has came out on top in the battle for the first choice left back between himself and Abilio Neves. He is really rounded out now, and his physicals, in terms of his pace and acceleration, I would love if they were 16, but they're not. But he's incredibly well-rounded and pretty much everywhere. There's no real weakness in his game. So him being our first choice, I'm more than happy with. And Abilio Neves hasn't kicked up any sort of fuss without being first choice as our left back, and he's more than capable of coming in and playing in place of Carlos Julio should he have a dip in form or if he drops out with injury. In terms of our centre-backs, again, I'm really comfortable with where we sit in terms of centre-backs. Our two main guys are Luis Gonçalves, who won Player of the Year. Absolutely fantastic. I would love his mentals to improve a little bit more. He's still got that one-star potential that he could grow into. It might be something we end up looking at in the summer if there's a worldy centre-back available for a reasonable fee. But Mark Julich is probably one of the best centre-backs on the game. Physically, he's just out of this world. 4-star current, 5-star potential, only 20 years old. We'll sign him for free from Bayern Munich in the summer. And he is our first choice, and he's doing absolutely wonderful stuff. Our backup centre-backs are very much Benoit Badiashile. Really well-rounded again. He looks absolutely fantastic. Having him as our fourth choice or third choice centre-back, absolutely fine by me. Alongside Nathan Wood, our typical English lad. Very, very well-rounded physically. Mentally, he's probably a little bit stronger than Luis Gonçalves, but technically he's definitely not. So he's probably our third choice, I would say. And of course, we've got all sorts of players who can actually play the centre-back role if we are in an injury crisis. So we're well covered in defence. I think it's when you start coming to the defensive midfield area, you might see a little bit of weakness in our squad. Our first choice, and has been all season, is Bentieb. Now, Bentieb, he's reaching his potential. He's not as good as I thought he was going to be when we signed him. He's been at the club 2 seasons now. I think we signed him for 4.6. This is his third full season at Brighton. And he's 10 assists. I mean, he's had a fantastic season, don't get me wrong. But in terms of his raw attributes, I think we can maybe get better in the summer. So defensive midfield is definitely an area where I think we could improve the first 11. But having him and Jordan Henderson, I'm more than happy to keep both at the club if they're both willing to stay. Jordan's just a great cover option all over the pitch, and Bentieb could potentially be our backup defensive midfielder should we sign somebody in the summer. If it doesn't happen, I'm happy with Bentieb being our first choice, I think. Central midfield area is something we're going to be improving on in the summer in terms of depth rather than first choice. Diogo Aquino is absolutely out of this world. He's probably our best player in the squad, and he's incredibly well rounded. He's had a fantastic season, and it was his injury, I think, that completely derailed our season in terms of the Champions League. So him at the club, get him locked down. He's still on a 4-year contract. If he kicks up a fuss, I'll give him a new one, and he will be at the club at the start of next season. Barcelona have been sniffing about, and there's been media reports of them potentially making a £154 million offer. But I haven't seen the AI even make an offer over £100 million for any of our players so far, apart from maybe Gravenberch. So it's unlikely that that's going to happen. Our backup for this season has been Marco Bulat. He will be leaving the club in the summer due to his contract running out. So that's an area we're going to have to replace. So you will see a new central midfielder coming in as a backup replacement for Aquino. Marco Bulat, he's been decent at the club, signed for £6 million. I think it was when we were first promoted. He's a decent little player, hasn't developed as much as I would have hoped, so he can leave the club. In terms of attacking midfield centre, again, unless there's a major offer for Ryan Gravenberch, I'm happy for him to stay at the club. The problem we've got with Ryan Gravenberch is every summer he gets his head gets turned and he kicks up a fuss. So if somebody comes in with 100 million plus, he might end up leaving the club. Monaco, Borussia Dortmund, Juventus and Real Madrid currently interested in him. We'll have to wait and see. If he ends up staying at the club, I'll be more than happy with that. And I'm happy with Bert Jacobs as a backup. If Gravenberch is to be sold, I think he will have to be replaced with a like-for-like replacement. I don't think Bert Jacobs is quite ready to make the step up and be in our first choice attacking midfielder. On the left-hand side, we've got a lot of options. Jeremy Doku was our first choice going into this season. He's still decent. He's still got time to grow. But if someone wants to buy him, they can pretty much have him. We're not going to say anything set. But Leicester, Newcastle and Southampton interested in his transfer sort of gives you the understanding on where his level currently is. He's not a top player in this league. We signed Juan Insfran in the January transfer window. And again, I wouldn't mind him being a backup. If we can sign somebody who's absolutely out of this world, I think I'm going to go for it. So defensive midfield, central midfield, left wing, I think are areas where we could improve. But if Insfran goes into next season being our first choice left midfielder, that's fine. He's good enough, and I think he will. With a full season under his belt, I think we'll see the best out of him. For the likes of Alvarado and stuff, they're sort of either side, you know, the decent backups, but valued at 49 million. If anyone comes in, I will be tempted to sell. On the right-hand side, we have Sebastian Jaros and Tion Veerman. Sebastian Jaros is improving pretty much every month. He's one of the top trainers at the club. He's always one of the ones that's improving the most, if not the most. And he's rapidly growing every day. Physicals are absolutely fantastic. Mentally and technically, he's well-rounded as well. So he will be our first choice going into next season. With Veerman being his understudy, signed him in January. He's decent. He's played pretty well when he's got the opportunity coming off the bench. And we'll look to give him as much game time as possible next season. And that brings us to the striker position. David Ibrahim was signed in the summer to be our first choice. He's developed lovely. I just love his attributes, how they look. Physically, he's beautiful. Mentally was one of the weaker areas we had with our other strikers, so getting him in was a big upgrade there. And technically, he's got the big three that I love to see. Dribbling, finishing, first touch. Absolutely fantastic. He hasn't performed unbelievably well. I mean, he has performed well. 20 goals in 31 games in the Premier League, 23 goals in 42 in all competitions. Maybe if we tweak the tactic a little bit to suit his style more, we'll be able to see more goals coming from him. But I'm quite happy with his contribution this season, and he's likely to be our first choice going into next season. Rodrigo Marquez is his understudy. He's valued at £56 million. If somebody comes in and wants to buy him, he's gone, to be honest with you. He's decent. He's come off the bench 11 times and started 8 games in the Premier League and got 6 goals, which is nothing to sneeze at. 12 goals in all competitions in, 29 appearances, 15 off the bench. He's decent, but he's not as good as David Abraham by any stretch of the imagination. And we've still got Darius Courtney in the squad. So it might be worth getting rid of Rodrigo Marquez and making Darius Courtney that direct backup replacement to Ibrahim. So as a whole, I think defensive midfield, definitely an area we can improve of in the first team squad. Potentially left wing, backup centre midfielder. And we'll pretty much be sorted then. It all depends on outgoings at that point. The AI transfers aren't really that aggressive, so I don't expect us to be selling all that much. But if we get rid of the likes of Jeremy Doku, we'll get rid of maybe even Benty if somebody comes in for him, then we'll be able to make some significant improvements with the funds that provides. In terms of goals and stuff, David Abraham, top goal scorer, 23 goals. Aquino from central midfield, 14 goals for the season. Yaros from right wing, 14. Gravenberch with 12. Rodrigo Marquez with 12. Alvarado really does well when he gets game time. 9 goals this season with 6 assists. In terms of the top assister, it is Benty from that defensive midfield role, getting 11 assists. Valentin at right back, he only came back in January and he got 9 assists. Absolutely fantastic. Same with Yaros on the right hand side, 9. Ibrahim was 7 and Abilio Neves was 7. Financially, the club's in an incredibly healthy state. We have 175 million in the overall balance. And of course, we have that 140 million pound to spend in the transfer budget, with plenty available in the wages should we need it. We've got a lot of players coming back from their loan spells from their respective clubs. The likes of Johan Hernandez could find himself in the first team squad if we end up selling some players. He's had a great season at Inter Milan, getting lots of first team football. I might be interested in selling or loaning him back out to help increase his value. Same with Mesquita, Alan Maciel, Julian Navarro, all them sort of players who have high potential. They're sort of reaching it now. They're sort of getting to the point where it's shit or get off the pot, basically. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with them lads. Some of them might make it in the first team squad. Some of them will probably be sold. And that's it for this season. A very, very good season. Winning the Premier League for the first time was always a big first step in FM19. So we're looking at the Champions League next season. That is going to be our aim. But anyway, if you have enjoyed today's video, please consider leaving a like. And if you are enjoying my content, get yourself subscribed. But until next time, take it easy.